What's going on, all my GOAT format duelists? ACP here, and I wanted to do a video just because I know I haven't done one recently, and you guys are probably going, where the hell's the content? So I've lately I've been busy working on GOAT duels. Gonna be the latest and greatest Yu-Gi-Oh simulator once it's done. So I've got the deck loaded in GOAT duels here, and you guys can see all the cards and this was a deck that was actually submitted to me by one of my followers, but I tested it in a few matches, and it's pretty interesting. It's definitely a kind of like high risk, high reward kind of deck. So what is this deck here? Basically, I think a lot of people would call this Stein Gate. I mean, you could also call it like Machine OTK because we've got like 3 limiter removals. So there's like a few different things that you could call it, but basically, this is definitely a hardcore OTK deck, right? This is not like your Reasoning Gate deck that tries to get a couple of like +1s with Air Knight and Sacred Crane, that sort of thing. Um, so in fact, you'll notice we don't have any of those cards here. And basically, the theory behind this deck is that when you activate Reasoning, in game 1 at least, your opponent is almost always going to call it wrong. It's possible that they might call level 8 and then get your Dark Magician of Chaos, but there's obviously only a 1 in 7 chance of that. Most of the time, people will call level 4. And in fact, in some of the matches that I tested this on Dueling Book, I had some people even calling level 5 for some reason. But you'll notice we don't run any level 5s here either. So, either way, they're probably going to call this wrong. But yes, so how does this deck work? So basically, every monster in this deck is a machine other than Dark Magician of Chaos. But, you got to play Dark Magician of Chaos. Card's too good. So you got a lot of action here for limiter removal. We got a lot of the other sort of standard Reasoning Gate cards. We got 3 Scapegoat, 3 Meta. Goat's definitely a classic Reasoning Gate card. You can use it to, just buy yourself some extra time, or obviously you get fuel for Monster Gate, Metamorphosis, and even Enemy Controller. And then we've got, for Speller Trap removal, 1 Heavy Storm, obviously, and the full 3 Giant Trunade, because again, this is, really a hardcore OTK deck, kind of like how Rescue Cat decks play 3 Giant Trunades. We got 3 Giant Trunades here, right? Makes sense. And so how does this deck work? I mean, basically, this deck can actually OTK in a few different ways. Obviously, most of the OTKs involve Cyber-Stein, and you can get to it pretty quickly. 2 out of our 7 monsters are copies of Cyber-Stein, so Reasoning and Monster Gate gonna flip over Stein a lot. Not a lot of people are calling level 2 on Reasoning right now, although I think, maybe some people should consider it, because it seems like, Cyber-Stein's becoming more popular. You see a lot of Reasoning Gate decks playing 1 or 2 copies. Rescue Cat decks now are even usually playing 1 copy to Searcher's Last Will. So, yeah, I mean, Cyber-Stein is definitely on the up and up right now in GOAT format. Very powerful card. And there's a lot of things we can get with it here. I do have this Fusions page open. So on GOAT Duels, there's no Fusion deck with the deck list, and that's because all of the Fusions are loaded into the game automatically, so no need. But for deck building, you can always pull up this page in case you forget what's legal. So let's talk about some of the good Stein targets. So the main one is Gatling Dragon. So, for those who don't know, Gatling Dragon's got 2,600 attack. It's a machine. So, of the machine fusions, it does have the most attack points, which is pretty important. And then, we can toss 3 coins, kill some monsters, and that's pretty helpful too. I mean, I will say, I did have some games where it was like, I can OTK if I don't flip 3 tails, but then I flipped 3 tails and didn't OTK. Or, I had some games where it's like, well, I can OTK, I don't know, if I don't flip 3 heads or something and kill my own guys, but then I flip 3 heads and kill my own guys. So, So there's a bit of risk here, hence the title of the video. But sometimes I had some games where I'd even get a Gatling Dragon, activate the effect, flip coins, not get enough heads, then just Metamorphosis here, get another copy of Gatling Dragon, and do the same thing. So this is definitely a deck that really, wants to summon Gatling Dragon. I think that's probably the most common fusion that this deck summons. But, as far as other targets, Master of Oz, classic Cyber-Stein card, that works too. You'll notice this deck does have 2 copies of Megamorph. So, sometimes, I don't know, your opponent sets a back row and ends for their first turn, and you just go Trunade, Stein, Megamorph, Master of Oz, and that's just game, right? So that's one way that you can OTK. Sometimes you just get like a Jinzo and a couple limiter removals, right? Kill them that way. Oh, they activate Reasoning. Don't call level 6. Oh, I've got Jinzo. Limiter game. Or sometimes, one of the interesting things about Upstart Goblin in this deck, and people who, have followed me for a while know that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Upstart Goblin in general. In this deck, however, it's kind of interesting because giving your opponent 1,000 life can actually be a good thing if you have, like, Megamorph in your hand. Because then that sort of, turns on your Megamorph, right? If both players have 8,000 life, well, Megamorph doesn't do anything. But if they have 9,000, you have 8,000, all of a sudden you're killing them. So, say you upstart your opponent, and, I don't know, you go Reasoning into Jinzo, and then you have Megamorph Limiter. Oh, that's game. But, of course, if you didn't have upstart, it wouldn't be game. So, yeah, and, Fusler, obviously, pretty powerful machine with a lot of attack, so you can OTK with that too. You can I don't know, get it off Reasoning, Monster Gate, and again, limiter game, limiter Megamorph game. Also interesting is if your Fusler is 1400, you can Megamorph it into Labyrinth Tank. So where is this guy? Yeah, Labyrinth Tank. So that's a level 7 machine with 2400 attack. So, I did have one game where my opponent, I don't know, did something like, I don't know, like drew 6 and passed or something, and I had, like, Fusler, Metamorphosis, Megamorph, or something, or no, I had Fusler, Metamorphosis, and, like, 2 limiters or something kill my opponent. It's just weird. Point is there, like, a lot of different sort of ways that you can, like, put all the cards together to kill your opponent. And obviously, Blowback Dragon, that's also a machine with some pretty decent attack points. So, you can use that to OTK your opponent as well. Pretty good card, because Blowback can kill, a monster or a spell or trap. So, again, your opponent might just set a spell or trap and pass. You just go, oh, Reasoning, summon Blowback, kill your spell or trap, and then, limiter game or whatever. Or sometimes you just, maybe you Reasoning into Blowback and, you have, I don't know, like a Cyber-Stein in your hand or something. So you go Blowback, Killer, Spell or Trap, summon Cyber-Stein, use effect, and then, I don't know, do something else for game. So the point is that there's sort of a lot of ways to sort of chain cards together to sort of, I don't know, increase your damage output. That's kind of the idea here. So pretty much like every single card in this deck is built around the OTK, right? So Vortex, Clear Goats. That's about all that Vortex does in this deck, and I actually found myself siding out Vortex a lot if the opponent didn't play Scapegoat. But obviously if they do, it's pretty good there. And then Snatch Steal and Enemy Controller are also pretty good against Scapegoat. So Enemy Controller, obviously turn a goat to attack. And with Snatch Steal, you can kind of do the same thing, right? You can Snatch Steal their goat token, turn the goat token to attack mode, and then, Heavy Storm, Giant Trunade, return Snatch Steal to your hand, and then give the opponent back the goat token in attack mode. So this deck, definitely doesn't want to be playing against Scapegoat, but at the same time, it's got, like, 3 pretty good outs, just in case they have it. And then, sometimes you can even just brute force, through a Scapegoat, right? You go Heavy Storm, they chain goats, then you just play a bunch of Gatling Dragons, kill all their goat tokens, and still kill them. Doesn't happen a lot, but it can happen. All the other, spells, pretty straightforward here. We're playing, like, a lot of 3-ofs. Only 2 Megamorph, which, I don't know, seems fine, I guess. Megamorph can be a little hit or miss in this deck. Sometimes it's, like, not that great. Sometimes it wins you the game. So it just kind of depends. But, Megamorphs don't stack. So if you put 2 Megamorphs on the same monster, it's no different than putting 1 Megamorph on your monster. So I think that's why this person decided to just play 2 Megamorphs. And then the traps here, we just got 3 jars and a reckless, right? Just kind of, hey, I want to draw as many cards as quickly as possible. Sometimes, the jars are a little too slow, but, the fact that every back row in this deck is chainable is pretty nice. So sometimes you'll go first and go set jar, set scapegoat, your opponent will activate heavy storm, and then you just chain them both. And that's pretty cool. So, yeah, I kind of already talked about Metamorphosis a little, but I'll talk about it a little more. Sometimes you can do this deck. Metamorphosis, Dark Magician of Chaos into Gatling is pretty nice, because obviously the Gatling's a machine and it has pretty good effect. You can Metamorphosis Gatling for another Gatling, use the effect again, and of course, Metamorphosis Fusler, very strong. It's not necessarily an amazing plan B, but, sometimes in this deck, if you maybe can't OTK or don't want to risk going for the OTK, you can just Metamorphosis Fusler and get either King Dragoon, which can't be targeted, or you can get, Last Warrior from another planet to stop your opponent from summoning. So, in particular, in Reasoning Gate mirrors, you can just win the game by just going Fusler, Metamorphosis for Last Warrior. Sometimes they don't have a lot of great outs to that. Sometimes they do have an out to it. And so hopefully that kind of explains sort of the general strategy behind what this deck is doing. It's the kind of deck where you can definitely get like a lot of wins in your first battle phase, right? So either turn 1, turn 2. But then sometimes you get kind of a slower hand and you maybe just kind of sit on scapegoats for a while, right? Just kind of draw some extra cards to jar greed, and, you kind of have to accumulate enough pieces to OTK. So it's just kind of one of these decks where usually the OTK requires a few different pieces, but there are a lot of pieces that you can line up to make it, right? Whether it's, Stein Megamorph, Machine Limiter Megamorph, or, Fusler, Metamorphosis Limiter, sometimes, Premature Burial plus Giant Churnade considered to help you put some extra things in play. So yeah, it's pretty cool deck. And I will stream this deck next time I stream, so you guys can kind of see how it works. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, to go over the side deck a little, there are a couple of cards that are kind of like just anti-aggro, so like Mirror Torrential and Brain Control. Those are kind of just like your anti-warrior cards, I think. Because, if your opponent, post side, they're like, oh, this guy is trying to OTK me, I better knock him down really quickly, right? Especially once they know, hey, this guy's on multiple Cyber-Steins, right? They're going to try to, rush you, summon a lot of monsters to get your life under 5,000, and then, of course, you can go, oh, I've got the Mirror, oh, I've got the Torrential, and kind of hold them back. But then the other cards are basically just a transition side into kind of a more normal Reasoning Gate deck. And the idea here is personally, I don't necessarily use this like transition side a lot. I think when people like hear the word transition side, they think, oh, I always have to transition in game 2. But this is definitely not a deck where you need to do that, right? Like if you think your main deck works, if you think you have a solid matchup advantage, if you think maybe your opponent doesn't really know what they're doing, you can easily just not side anything, right? Just keep the same 40 going into game 2. However, if your opponent is kind of smart and, you kind of showed a lot of your deck in game 1, then the idea is you transition side into a more normal Reasoning Gate deck, and, in game 1, they're probably calling a lot of level 4 on Reasoning, maybe a lot of level 8 or a lot of level 5. But then game 2, once they kind of see what your deck is doing, then they're gonna call a lot of level 2 or a lot of level 6. And then that's when you go, oh no, actually I'm just going to play a bunch of Sacred Cranes. Good luck. So that's kind of the idea. So what you side out is basically, the 3 limiters, the 2 megamorphs, and you basically just side out all of the monsters except Jinzo and Dark Magician of Chaos. So post-side, your Reasoning Gate targets are just a Demok, a Jinzo, and 3 Sacred Cranes. So you're kind of transitioning into kind of a fast, still Reasoning Gate deck, but Dimension Fusion styled. And the idea is, hey, if 3 out of my 5 monsters are Sacred Crane, well, that's fine if they just don't ever call level 4 on Reasoning, right? So that's kind of the theory there. So as far as how this deck does the meta, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I think this deck has some really good matchups and some really bad matchups, and kind of also the risk that you take with this deck are there's some side cards this deck just really can't beat. So one of the cards this deck really can't beat, sort of with the, if you don't change your main at all, is this deck can't really beat Kuriboh. I mean, it can beat it, but it's very hard to beat it. Because this deck, uses all of its resources for one big attack, and if they just Kuriboh, you're just done, right? Especially because of limiter removal, right? So imagine you go, Stein, Gatling, limiter, attack, and they just Kuriboh. Now all your monsters are dying in the end phase, and you've paid, 5,000 life, so you're basically, just gonna lose. So this deck just can't really ever beat a Kuriboh. And for those who have watched my previous videos, people do know that I'm a big fan of Kuriboh on the side right now. I especially think it's an even better side when you have sort of more of these, Reasoning Gate decks with Cyber-Stein in them, because Kuriboh is really good against Cyber-Stein. I mean, Kuriboh was the classic anti-Cyber-Stein card from 2006. That was the format after GOAT format where Cyber-Stein OTK was very popular, very scary, so people just cited Kuriboh. And that works here too. Cards like Threatening Roar and Hollowed Life Barrier also can work. I mean, they at least buy you 1 extra turn. So, if this deck goes Trunade and you chain Threatening Roar, then that might be enough. That might be enough to help you win. But obviously, the turn after you activate Threatening Roar, it's good if you have some sort of follow-up, because if not, they'll just wait till the next turn and just kill you then. So yeah, Kuriboh, almost unbeatable. Threatening Roar, pretty strong, but still beatable. And then I think the third card that this deck really has a problem with is Jowgen the Spiritualist. I mean, really all Reasoning Gate decks do. And I think Jowgen's a very strong card right now. Jowgen it's fairly popular in the side. It's definitely not a card that you see in every side, but a lot of people definitely like it. This deck, it does have some ways to attack over Jowgen. A 1400 Fusler can attack over Jowgen in defense, but, I mean, whether or not you'll be able to do that, it's not really guaranteed. If you transition side, you can summon a Sacred Crane and just try to attack over Jowgen. But, overall, Jowgen's definitely going to cause this deck some problems. If the Jowgen is an attack, you can summon Cyber-Stein and attack over the Jowgen. Maybe use Cyber-Stein's effect main phase 2 to get a King Dragoon or something. But even that, it deals with the Jowgen, but then it's you've used Cyber-Stein without killing your opponent, so that's kind of bad. So that's kind of what you're mainly worried about. Like I said, this deck also really doesn't want to play against opposing copies of Scapegoat. Good news is that, we do have 3 outs to Scapegoat. And yeah, I will say, one of the things, I sort of talked about the negatives. I think one of the positives with this deck is that a lot of other people are playing Upstart Goblin right now. And I tell you, giving a Cyber-Stein deck more life points is not what you want to be doing. So if you expect, a lot of people to be, maining Upstart Goblin, I think this deck's pretty solid choice. In particular, a lot of the popular Thunder Dragon Chaos builds that people are playing, I think this deck does pretty well against, right? Because they're usually playing Upstart Goblin, they're not playing Scapegoat, and with the side, it kind of depends, right? I mean, maybe they're siding Jowgen, maybe they're siding Threatening Roar, but they're not necessarily doing that. So I think this deck is a pretty decent choice in the meta. The two most popular decks are Thunder Dragon, Chaos, and Warriors, and I think this deck does pretty well against those decks specifically. Does this deck do well against GOAT control? I don't know. I mean, it probably does okay. I haven't actually played against GOAT control, so I don't know for sure. And of course, there are a lot of different builds of GOAT control. And, I also think this deck does pretty well against the Reasoning Gate Mirror. I did play one match against, the Reasoning Gate Mirror, and I just, killed him very early in both games. And the advantage this deck has in the Mirror is, one, you can just spam Last Warrior from another planet, and they can't. So, you just spam that, and then they can't win. I mean, also this deck just kills them faster than they kill you, right? So, their deck is going to be, trying to kill on, turn 3, turn 4, most of the time. You're going to be killing on, turn 1, turn 2. So, that I think that's something good that this deck has going for it. So yeah, I mean, I'd give this deck a shot. I mean, like I said before, it's definitely kind of a high risk, high reward deck. The deck involves a lot of coin flipping with blowback and Gatling, and you can definitely just draw some trash hands and lose. But the ceiling, as people say, is pretty high. So if OTK decks are kind of your thing, if you like Cyber-Stein, I'd give this deck a shot. And then, I just want to close this video by saying, this deck was submitted to me by one of my channel members. So, if you want to submit one of your decks to have me, fix or profile on the channel, be sure to click the join button on YouTube. So that does two things. One, it helps me because, I'm trying to build a new GOAT format simulator, and that, of course, does cost money. And then, so that's what it does for me. And then what it does for you is, once you're a channel member, you can, submit me matches, and, I can, help you, sort of get better by telling you what you did wrong in those matches. You can submit decks, and I'll say, hey, here's the changes I would make. I'll play your deck on stream. Or you can even give me recommendations as far as a specific video that you want me to make. And, if I think it's a fairly reasonable request, I'll make a video on whatever you want. So yeah, if, you want to find out more about GOAT duels, it's got a lot of sort of GOAT format specific features. One of the things that it does, for example, is it resolves Reasoning and Monster Gate for you automatically. So it's a manual simulator, kind of like Dueling Book, but it kind of has some extra features built into it. It has scripts for Reasoning and Monster Gate. It's got scripts for the coin flipping on Blowback Dragon, that sort of thing. So, if that's something that you want to test out and it's something that you want to help me improve, then, be sure to visit goatduels.com, click register. That'll take you to the beta page, and then you can sign up for closed beta. It's not a finished product yet, right? You're basically sort of helping me make the tool better. But at this point, we've got a lot of cards in the game. We've got 35 beta testers at this point, I believe. So there are plenty of people that you can play matches with at this point. So yeah, be sure to check that out. And yeah, as usual, if you guys, try out this deck, let me know in the comments how it did for you. Were you winning your games? Were you losing games? Were you getting lucky on your Blowback Dragon flips? Were you running into a lot of Karibos? Yeah, let me know.
I'm always top, won't accept 33. I'm always fresh, never wear a dirty tee. Never drop a game, so I say GG. Master of cards, so they call me MC.